If losing in trading is making you feel scared, frustrated, and even angry, then this video is going to expose something that you probably don't want to admit. Because the reason that you're not making money in trading is not because the markets are against you, but it's because you've been trained to think in a way that is making losing automatic. And so every time that you take a loss, your brain is telling you that you wasted hours of your life. Or you're probably thinking that maybe this is just not for you. But I assure you that is that belief alone that is sabotaging your entries, your exits, and most importantly, your discipline. So today in this video, I'm actually going to show you how to become a profitable trader. And it's not going to be from learning more strategies, but it's going to be by unlearning your beliefs around money, time, and what losses are supposed to represent. And so if you're willing to unlearn what has been keeping you stuck, then this video will change the way that you trade forever. So let's jump right into it. So the first mistake that most traders are actually making is that they believe that they just have to look at a chart and understand how it moves and flows. But that's not actually what trading really is. Because you see, trading is about understanding how people respond to uncertainty, losses, and most importantly, how they react when they're being scared. Because you see, the reality is this: for you to be that same person that is wanting to make tens of thousands of dollars a day in trading, you also have to be that same person that is willing to lose thousands of dollars first in order to experience that. But simultaneously, if you're somebody that is wanting to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a day, then you also have to be that same person that is willing to lose tens of thousands of dollars first in order to experience that. But then most importantly, if you're somebody that is wanting to make millions of dollars in trading, then you also have to be the same person that is willing to experience losing hundreds of thousands of dollars first. And so what is this point that I'm trying to make? Is that there has never been a profitable trader who has successfully been able to just skip losses as if it's not a prerequisite to how we trade. And so what we have to do is separate ourselves from thinking that somehow losses is somehow defining us, that we're just not good enough. Because you see, if you were able to think back to multiple experiences in your life where your environment was able to control how you actually believed and moved throughout that environment, they either allowed you to show you what is possible, or they allowed you to continue just to settle into doubts of what is not possible. Because you see, if you can think back to a time when you were a baby, you didn't know what fear was. You didn't know what it meant to be scared. But all of a sudden, you're able to see all of these different people around you being able to do certain things that you personally at that moment in time may have felt like you weren't capable. But because you've seen so many people around you doing something that you weren't able to do yet, you didn't care how many times you had to fail. You fail, you fail, you fail, you fail. You're trying to crawl. You're trying to do all of these different things before walking. But then something started to happen. And you started to realize that there are steps in order for me to start to walk. So what I have to do right now is I have to respect the process, and I have to start figuring out how to effectively crawl. And after I start to master how to crawl, then all of a sudden I start getting a little bit more curious to starting to use objects around me, to starting to brace myself up so that I can figure out how to stabilize my feet up underneath me. Because see, here's the thing. If you never decided to try to do that, then your legs would not actually be capable enough to holding you up. But see, the essence of this is you had to be willing to fail after another fail, after another fail, after another fail. But what happens to your mind is you get so okay with failure because what is teaching you, if you allow it to teach you, is to become better next time. And so the thing that I see that most traders struggle with, that they're not even aware of, is something called loss aversion, which just simply means that the losses that you experience are absolutely magnified than all of the successes that you've experienced in your life, or even the wins. And so what this actually winds up looking like in your trading results, you had 2 successful wins. And so each of these trades are 3-to-1 ratios, meaning that anytime that you win, you're making $300. But every time you lose, you're losing $100. So you have the opportunity for every trade that you participate in to make triple the amount of what you're willing to lose. And so here it is, you just won 2 trades, which now means that you are up $600. But then all of a sudden, the next trade that you take, and it's a loss, and somehow you're so focused on the loss itself that you can't even see that you're up $500 in profit already. And so this is what I'm saying, that is not the strategy itself as to why most traders are not profitable. It's because when they magnify all of the losses in their portfolio, what they wind up starting to do is revenge trading. And now, because they have magnified the loss itself without being able to look back in the past to count all of those wins and the achievements that you have done so far, the same as when you were a baby, and yes, you were falling multiple times. But who cares if now you're able to walk? And so again, we have to be grateful for the progress of what we have done up until this point and allowing the losses to not be magnified more than what it has to be. But if you allow the losses itself to reveal to you what you could do better next time, then that's where you start to actually learn something absolutely beautiful. Is that a loss is not necessarily a loss, but it's more of an opportunity for you just to get better. And so for me, of how I trade, is I don't actually consider a loss unless I went outside of my rules altogether, or I didn't put in that stop loss like I told myself that I was going to. Because you see, it is that behavior itself that if you allow that to continue, then there's no way for you to actually make a money printing machine to where you know exactly why you're winning. And so if every time that you're trying to change your strategy, just because you actually wind up getting a loss, then you're now only operating on fear, frustration, and anger to control every decision making that you make after. And so the solution to this is, if you're not currently profitable right now, that is okay. But just continue to have the discipline that is necessary to keep measuring your level of effectiveness to executing that trade so that you can get the data back that can actually show you everything that you need to know of what you need to improve in. So allow the losses to start being seen as opportunities to build out your money printing machine. Because you see, then at that point, you can start asking yourself the most critical questions: that did I follow my plan? And then if that one is a check off the box, then the next question that you should ask is, did I manage my risk correctly? Because you see, it is those two factors that is actually what's going to print out this money printing machine, which now starts to lead me into my next point as to why most traders are not seeing the results of what they want to experience. Is because they're starting to actually take every trade personally. And I'm going to share this with your story with you because I got a client that is a very profitable trader, Juan. But in the beginning of his stages of him focusing on the profits themselves, he started to associate whether a day was a good day in trading versus whether a day was a bad day in trading based off the results of what he was producing on those days. And so I remember one time where, here it was, he just made thousands of dollars in that day. And he's texting me and he's saying, oh, today was a great day. And so to him, it seemed very minor of what he was saying. But to me, I knew where that was coming from. And I knew he was starting to associate today actually being a great day, but simply based off of the results of what came in. And the issue with that way of thinking is because now, if you're allowing your results to dictate how you feel in that day, then what is there now to stop you that when you do get hit with a loss, that all of a sudden you don't just go and blow all of the profits that you've already done? Because you see, there was a time where he had a conversation with me and he was like, yo, man, I'm really struggling. I was like, what's up? And so, he just screenshots me, his profits for today. And then he says, but I feel like something is holding me. I was like, what do you mean by that? And he's like, I'm not going to lie to you. I know you be telling me that, look, 2 to 3 something trades a day is more than enough. But somehow I feel like I just need to take more trades. And so as we continue to talk about it, he then further told me that the reasons as to why he was feeling what he was feeling was because at his job, he was showing people his results of what he was able to do on a day-to-day basis. But the response that he got back was something that he didn't expect. And here it is, his coworkers, because they weren't able to understand how he was able to do what he was doing, they then said, well, how much are you able to make in a day? And with him being truthful and honest, he said, there are some days that I may lose and some days that I may win, but on average, it's $200 something a day. And for them, in their minds, they couldn't see how $200 a day is somehow life-changing, but they didn't understand how much time he was putting in to make that $200. He wasn't trading the entire day in order to make that $200. That $200 took him literally 20 minutes to being able to take his piece of creativity and apply that to the markets, to then being able to extract money from the markets without having to do any kind of physical labor. But you see, this is why it's so important for us to understand that our environment has a lot to do with training us to have this automatic loss mindset. Because here it was in that very day that had he not had a mentor, somebody he was able to talk to about what he was actually really feeling, then he would have went right back into the markets, experienced the loss based off of what he has allowed to drive him emotionally to then potentially blowing his entire account. And so hear me when I say we have to detach ourselves from the results of what we experience without allowing the losses themselves to define you as a trader. And most importantly, allowing other people that have no idea how to make money any other way other than trading their time for money tell you how much money you should be making. Because you see, here's the beautiful thing about trading itself. Once you get your strategy down, where it was once able to make you $10 per trade, this same strategy, as you're able to find your ratio that allows you to have a successful win rate, you can keep everything the exact same and still now be able to have the opportunity to allow that same strategy before to now start to make you thousands of dollars per trade. And so this is that part again that I don't want you to miss. That crawling stage, figuring out emotionally, how do you feel when you lose money? Because when you learn to allow the losses to show you something that nothing else can, the wins is not going to show you what it is that you're doing wrong. And so you have to fall in love with the losses themselves or what they can actually show you and reveal to you, because that itself is the actual gold mine that you need to be sprinting towards to get as many of these out of the way as fast as possible so that you can be able to experience this kind of win rate. Which leads me off into my last point of why your beliefs have been making you feel like it's been automatic losses for you. And that is falling into the time for money trap, where the reason why most people are afraid to lose money is because they have been taught that time is money. Even though in a second we're going to prove that you don't really believe it, but because you've allowed so many people to say it around you without you shutting that thought down, you're actually now starting to operate in it without even you knowing. And so the issue when you start to allow the time that goes by to think that it's associated with the money involved, you start to think that the more time that you start spending into trading, that all of a sudden somehow that is going to make you more money. But that's the furthest thing from the truth. And so because most people get paid by the hour, they start to measure that time based off of the money that they're able to produce back and asking themselves, was it worth it? And so now when you start to realize that there's an opportunity for you to multiply your money that has been coming in, and then you start to experience a loss, you only now start to associate all of the days of work equivalent to the hours of time that you had to put in for that amount of money. And so now what you start doing is starting to play scared because you believe that somehow if you try to start to avoid the losses, that somehow that's going to mean that you're not going to be able to experience losses. But I'm here to tell you that when you try to avoid the losses, more of them start to show up. Because again, the decision making that you're now starting to base your decision making off of is fear. But if you're allowing yourself to think that time is money, then what you're going to do every single time that you have an opportunity, you're going to be exchanging your time in order to make money. And you're going to try to bring that same philosophy to trading, and it's not going to work. But why? It's because you're operating off of a lie itself. It's like, for example, if somebody were able to give you $1 million and you accepted, but right after you accepted, they said, wait, but there's a catch. If you take this money right now, you would have to end your life today. At that point, you would not want that money no more. As much as it sounded good in the beginning, the moment there was a catch that said you had no more time after today, you immediately decided like, wait, no, I'm not doing that. Why? Because you understand that the money can come and go. You can get that money back, but your time, you can't. And so again, these are these simple beliefs that we may have allowed our parents to tell us this, our coworkers, our bosses. And so this is why year after year, we're finding ourselves looking for all of these different answers as to how we can financially get ahead. but we're still wanting to hold all of this baggage that has been keeping us still in the same spot. And so again, as we remember, we got to unlearn the things that are no longer serving us so that we can freely move in this new direction. And so again, allow the losses to teach you what the losses can only teach you. Because the same way that you went off to college because you believed in your heart of hearts that after you pay this fee for being able to get into this institution, you believed that it was going to eventually pay off for you. And so the way you got to look at these losses as this is your institution fee in order to figure out how to become profitable later. And so what is my point? My point is this is a prerequisite. You have to be willing to embrace the losses in order to experience the wins on the back end. And so here's how you can implement everything that we've talked about so that you're able to track your data so that again, you can create your money printing machine over time. You can go into your trading view chart and document every single trade that you have successfully won or lost. And once when you get out of 20 trades, this would give you an idea as to what this strategy specifically through being disciplined, having the same entry and exit every time can provide you with the information that you need to now being able to adjust where your entry is placed, where your stop loss is getting potentially taken out, or is your take profit too low or too high where your strategy is not actually being able to provide you that amount of a move happening. But I want to be clear, it is dropping the ego and the fear of losses themselves is what is going to give you the ability to being able to endure this process, to being able to eventually being able to look back and the data will be so clear to you. It's like, why did I not do this before? And it's simply because at the time you were allowing the losses to define you. But now you're going to be using the losses to actually catapult you. And so if you change the way that you believe about what money is supposed to be used for, then you can now start to implement what it is that you believe about the purpose of money to the discipline of what you're going to be able to manage so you can be a profitable trader. And so now that you know the truth about losing in trading, you now know what it actually means to actually being able to be a successful trader. And so if this video has blessed you in any kind of way, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, because at the end of the day, whether you become profitable is based off of your level of discipline and what it is that you allow yourself to actually believe on a day-to-day basis.